In an ever-evolving digital landscape, for your business to thrive, you must adapt or die. Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI, the podcast helping you harness the power of AI and marketing tools to revitalize and grow your business. And now here's your host, marketing expert and author of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI, Emanuel Rose.
Well, welcome to this episode of Marketing in the Age of AI. Today, we're going to dive deep into the idea of where we're at in the AI development cycle and what we can expect in the coming few months and in next couple of years, and maybe even get into some deep conversation about security and ethics around personal data. My guest today is Bob Rogers, and he's a seasoned scientist and entrepreneur with a strong background in artificial intelligence and data science. And he, in the past, he's led a data scientist group at UCSF that helped to develop the world's first FDA-cleared AI on an X-ray device. And he's currently running a couple of companies around supply chain and security in AI. And Bob, welcome to the show. And I appreciate you spending some time today.
Thanks, Emanuel. I'm really glad to be here.
Well, you've got an impressive run up into this time that we're in. You know, like Elon Musk said, there's the side of intelligence is the ability to forecast the future, and it looks like you were forecasting where to be pretty well. So, congrats.
Yes, forecast. I think the other thing to know about forecasting is that it always requires a certain amount of luck. And so, I wrote my first book on AI in 1993, back when it was artificial neural networks.
Right.
And you know, it sounded very exciting and interesting to me, and got me kind of going. But obviously, I could not have foreseen how dramatically and how rapidly things would evolve. And so, it's exciting to be here. It's sort of like surfing a big wave.
Yeah, that's cool. And you've got to witness the development over the last 3 decades, which is a phenomenal amount of historicity to be in touch with. So very fortunate to have this conversation with you. You say it's developed quickly, but yet you've been working on it for 30 years. So help me understand what the rapidity is that you're seeing.
Yeah, so it's really the new cycles. You know, AI is famous for having little bursts in the 50s, and then later in the 80s, and these long AI winters. I think the AI winter is experiencing its own climate change, and we're not going back to that.
Right.
It's really heating up fast. So if you look back 3 years when ChatGPT came out, that was really like the last spark and sort of explosive event for AI. Going back a little bit further, you can actually get a sense for that ramp. Computer vision was the first big application. Really, the first good computer vision applications with deep learning came out in 2006. So that's that's a while ago, but they were very primitive. Real mainstream computer vision started to come into its own around 2014. Shortly after that, we had transformers and an AI that started to look like modern AI. And then when large language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude came out, all of a sudden we're seeing a very rapid trajectory of both development of algorithms, but also of use cases. So it's that last few years since ChatGPT came out where it's gotten so fast that my network of experts who tell me used to always know exactly what was going on. They now need a network of experts to help them know what's going on, and it's very, very fast. So, and that's exciting, but it's also it's bewildering. I know for enterprises and business owners, sometimes they just simply ask me, "What is AI?" They're
Right.
not even sure. They know they need to use it, but they don't know what it is.
Yeah, like you say, the last 3 years, I mean, we're on a classic marketing curve, right, with this
Hmm.
innovation, early adoption, and they're saying a third of companies have started to use AI purposefully, which
Hmm.
is a little bit. Uh, that's an overstatement. I think the adoption is much lower than that still.
Hmm. Yeah.
Surprisingly, even though there's so much retail level software available in the
Yes.
marketplace for certain. Yeah, yeah. So I guess I'd love to get your perspective on how somebody who's running an enterprise, a 10 or 30 or $50 million company, should be approaching integrating these tools into their operation.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that people need to keep in mind is that you want to be very use case driven, especially early on. I attended a Gartner event around supply chain last year, and it was notable because we've had AI and people talking about AI for a while, but at that event, every single person from an enterprise literally at the top of their buying list, because you got to go to Gartner to kind of try to figure out what to buy.
Yeah.
Literally the letters AI were at the top of every list.
Right.
And people were pulling me into conversations and asking me, gee, I'm just trying to understand, what is this thing that's on my list? What's real, what's not, right? So
Yeah.
the way to know what's real and what's not is to start with a very specific use case. And I think one of the experiences that I've had that was very formative was I was chief data scientist at Intel for about 5 years,
Okay.
and I was responsible for Intel's partner ecosystem for analytics and AI. And I saw literally thousands of companies building data lakes and giant, big data systems. And at the end of the project, they'd spent $10 million. The CEO says, great, you
Now
built
what?
this big thing. What's the ROI?
Yeah. Right. What do
Right?
we do with it? Yeah.
Yeah. And the ROI was always negative $10 million, which
Right.
doesn't go over well with CEOs, right?
No.
It's like,
Right.
no, that's not. And the problem was they were trying to sort of boil the ocean, right? Transform all your data, build this huge infrastructure. If you build the data lake, the insights will bubble to the surface magically.
Yeah.
And magical is the right word, because that's magical thinking. What you
Yeah.
need to do is focus on a use case. Now, of course, I have some favorite use cases, such as the supply chain optimization that OII does. That was
Yep.
an absolutely shameless plug,
That's
but it's
okay. Yeah.
actually a great example because the OII product Opti is not an AI product that's looking for a place to be applied. It is a product that is very specifically solving a problem in supply chains that
Which is.
happens to use AI as a piece of the tooling, or as
Yeah.
a
So
few
what's the
pieces.
problem? What's the problem that you're solving?
Yeah. So the challenge with supply chains is that if you think about, so let's define the supply chain for a manufacturer as the distribution network from finished goods all the way out to customers. Now, there's also supply chain on the other side where you're bringing in materials. So, you can extend that, but the idea is you've got some product that you need to bring in, you need to do something, and then you need to get it to your customers. The challenge is your goal is to get product to customers in the most efficient, time responsive way possible. But to have infinite availability of your product, you would have to have infinite inventory in every warehouse.
Sure. Yeah.
So the problem with that, of course, is the CFO is not going to like infinite inventory. It's bad
No.
on the balance sheet.
Yep.
Payments are high. It's painful. So that network needs to somehow efficiently get product, but without spending huge amounts of capital to do it. And the thing that's working against that doing that efficiently is the fact that getting product from point A to point B in any part of your supply chain is highly variable.
Yeah.
So you don't have a good number between this distribution center and that distribution center. Your demand from your customers is highly variable. And of course, the pandemic showed us that even supply can be highly variable. When all that stuff is going at the same time, you have a high dimensional optimization problem, figuring out how to get the best design to get product without spending too much.
Yeah.
And the rules of the game are constantly shifting because of that variability. So the problem is getting product to customers in a cost-effective way. And the solution that we have is we have AI that monitors all these different components, builds a digital twin of a supply chain, and then figures out, okay, this is what you should expect in the future. It's not one scenario, it's thousands of scenarios.
Right.
How do those play out? And how could you change your network design proactively on an ongoing basis in order to achieve your best outcome all the time as conditions change? So it's really like it's like a GPS that tells you as the road conditions change, what's your best course to getting that product to customers. And not logistically, like it's not the truck routes, it's the flow of materials through your network. And
so is it modeling? Are you also dynamically helping to get product to warehouses?
So we're literally defining what the replenishment strategies should be for all the different things. So, for example, you're looking at widgets in a particular warehouse.
Yep.
As customers buy widgets, the inventory goes down. When do you place the next order with your
reorder point? Yeah.
And how much do you? Very simple from that point of view. But when you've got thousands of products all competing for the same resources, all going to the same customers, that it's a very, very complex problem. And so the AI is the only way you can really kind of globally solve it.
And so you're monitoring economic levels, you're monitoring the weather, you're monitoring the purchasing. I mean, all those sorts of things.
So our approach is we don't try to boil the ocean in terms of what data we take in. We monitor and model what's known to be specifically relevant to the customer's business.
Sure. Nice.
And so we have a partnership with Maersk, which is the big shipping company.
Sure.
They know about a lot of things that are happening on the ground. Where are the containers? Where are the containers being slowed down?
Yeah.
What are the different ways that you might rearrange things to get from point A to point B faster? And so we're taking that kind of information in to help organizations really understand the trade-offs.
Right.
I mean, it's interesting because just in that Maersk example, Maersk can give you two different options. There's the sort of basic option that may be a route from China through Panama up to Savannah and then eventually to Indianapolis, right?
Right.
That costs a certain amount. It has a certain plus or minus on the timing, and it's fairly uncertain. They can create another route, which is more expensive, but gets it there within plus or minus a few days, all the way to Indianapolis.
Right.
Well, if it costs more per container, but the variability is less, what is that worth to me as an organization?
Sure.
Our modeling can tell them exactly in dollars and cents what the trade-offs are and where they should do that type of activity. So it ends up working like that for all the different pieces of the supply chain that are variable.
Yep.
We can translate uncertainty into trade-offs.
Wow, that's the important part of forecasting right there, right?
Yeah. And actually you bring up something very interesting. So I said you need to be lucky and to predict, right? But one of the core tenets that I have is it's very hard to know exactly what's going to happen in the future.
Sure.
So this approach where we build out lots of different ways it could play out with our AI is actually very powerful because it takes some of the guesswork out of it. I don't depend on a particular outcome. I know that within this range of reasonable to expect outcomes, I'm in good shape.
Yeah.
And it's actually reassuring because another part of my background, and this actually followed right from that book in 1993.
Yeah.
So the book was called Artificial Neural Networks Forecasting Time Series.
Mm.
And people, I was a physics kid. I have a PhD in physics. I was working on black hole models. I didn't know anything about the stock market. In fact, people started calling me and asking me, can you forecast the stock market? And I was like, well, I don't know, because I'm not really sure what the stock market is. So went back to the drawing board, did a little research, ended up co-founding a quantitative futures hedge fund, which I ran with another partner for 12 years.
Nice.
And that experience really solidified for me, how hard it is to forecast accurately, but also how important the risk management side of the equation is. Okay, I think I know what's going to happen, but if I'm wrong, what are the consequences?
Yep.
And so that's the flip side of this whole thing for OII. The Opti product really tells you, like, okay, this is the range of ways that things can go right, but also the range they could go wrong, and how do you mitigate those risks quickly?
Yeah.
Or if something changes, how do you respond? So it's a nice use case for AI because it's bringing together lots of information. It's assembling things in a sort of set of little predictive models. And then we do, just because we couldn't resist, we built a very interesting generative AI user interface so that people can ask natural language questions
Nice.
about their supply chain.
Yep.
And that's where my experience in, like, how where organizations right now are struggling with AI, that really sort of emphasized a few of those challenges that organizations have.
Yeah, I like the succinctness of that, where you're saying, I got these big pieces of data the machine is churning, which is good use, and then you've got the dynamism of the marketplace, and it's churning that data also to plug it into what are the known unknowns, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
is a potential reality, and when it triggers that potential reality, you've already got a solution for it.
Yes, that's a great way to frame it, actually, because we don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you when the next boat's going to get stuck in the Suez Canal,
Right.
but I can certainly tell you that within a range of potentially likely disruptions, how do you hedge that risk? How do you make sure that you're not being overly conservative, but you're not betting you don't have all your eggs in one basket?
Yeah. I'm thinking that the insurance companies might want to contract with you also.
Yeah, that's a great point. You see, all you insurance companies out there, give me a call.
That's right. Well, I think that's fascinating. I do want to ask you a little bit about security and data integrity, and how, just at the retail level, how do we as marketing people make sure that when I plug in a campaign in my creative, that I'm just not seeding ChatGPT for all my competitors to see what I'm doing next quarter? Like, can you help me with that?
Yeah, that's a really awesome framing for it. So it is absolutely true. I ask this question all the time to CEOs. What are you doing to protect yourself from your data going out into the wild when you put it into AI services? Your OpenAI, ChatGPT,
Right. Yeah.
Claude, all that stuff. And interestingly, there are some CEOs who just say, well, I don't allow any data to go in any of those or not. I mean, the problem is you're shooting yourself in the foot a little bit,
Right.
because the world is moving fast. I've heard other CEOs say, well, I have a relationship with my vendor. We've got an enterprise license. They've promised not to share my data or use it in training.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great step in the right direction.
Sure.
But you kind of implied the salient question here, which is, well, wait a minute. Still, I'm in a multi-tenant AI, using a multi-tenant AI service along with my competitors.
Yep.
Couldn't things bleed over? It's absolutely possible for things to bleed over. So I have a couple of different strategies. For the Opti product, we've actually, instead of having customer data go to an AI service and have the AI try to answer the question directly, or extract pieces, etc. What we do is we've trained an AI, basically a prompting system, to be very, very good at using our product.
Okay.
In other words, AI knows a lot about the knobs and levers in Opti, but it actually never gets to know anything about my customer's data.
Right.
So and that's very powerful, because the AI is very good at building strategies around answering complex questions using the components of tooling, the analytics that we have built into the product, and it's very extensible. So as in the marketing world, knowing what your customer is thinking is incredibly valuable, right?
Absolutely. It's
So,
just like knowing what your wife wants to do for dinner.
yes, exactly. So when we see customers type a question that we can't answer, that's immediately like going on the list for, oh, this might be a future product enhancement, right?
Yep.
This is what they're thinking about. This is what they care about. So I really love that approach in general. It's 100% secure. It's a way for me to interact in a very natural way with my customer and understand what they're thinking, not just have them click around on a pre-built page. And I do think that the world of user interfaces is going to become more and more fluid, because why do we have fixed computer interfaces and pages and reports? Well, because we didn't have a way to communicate fluidly with computers before.
Right.
Obviously, we do now. So it's becoming more and more fluid. So that's something we're going to see in general. So one approach is to really create that isolation layer. Don't let the data go to the AI. That isn't probably always the solution. There are some cases where I'm starting to see people build local LLMs or AI systems in their own infrastructure.
Interesting. Like even air gapped or
it's air gapped. It can be air gapped, or it can be in your own your own VPC in your cloud. So it's really only accessible to you and your people.
Okay, sure.
And so that has some really nice applications for very sort of, I'd say, granular use cases where you want granular understanding of your business or your some set of data that you're sort of operating on. The challenge is, and this is just a sort of, I think this is something that will be quickly sort of addressed, but the challenge is the tech is moving so fast that by the time you've spent 6 months building your little local thing, the starting point that you can get off the cloud is already better than what you've got.
Because you've got billions of users over there, and you've got this inbred AI.
Yes, exactly.
I'm with you.
So that's one. There's an interesting, so the Beekeeper AI, which is the company that I co-founded, it spun out of work that we did at UCSF to build that world's first FDA cleared AI on an X-ray device. The challenge with that project was we built the AI using mostly UCSF data. It worked extremely well, but then the FDA wanted us to be able to prove that it would work on any patient anywhere, right? You can't just say, oh, it worked on my data and now send it to Germany or the East Coast or wherever. So we had to collect these 5 huge data sets that were very specific. The cost and effort to do that was huge.
I'm sure.
And so what we did is, and the reasons for that was you either had to pull the data in and then guarantee that you weren't going to spill the beans on the data, or you had to use the data wherever it was and then figure out the infrastructure and the regulatory around that. So what we did is we built a platform that makes it possible to operate an algorithm on private data without sharing and moving the data, but also without showing the secrets of the algorithm. So everything's protected, sort of a 360 zero trust type of approach. And that does have some merits in this arena of protecting data, because you can protect parts of your workflow, parts of the data that are connecting with the AI interface, but you don't necessarily have to have that whole AI service in the confidential. It's called a confidential VM.
Gotcha. So
And
you
so
can pull it
sort
in
of
and reference it versus interacting with it, right?
Exactly. So that's also a way to do it. And then some of it is just policies. Like there are
Right.
things that you're going to just accept the risk.
Yep.
That, I mean, the most realistic thing is having policies where you're going to accept the risk that some information is going to get out there.
Yep.
It's not going to be used to train. And so if it were to somehow leak into other people's AI streams, it's not going to be so damaging or so recognizable that, you could never put patient data into one of these.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
But you might have some sensitive corporate data, like you said, some information you're using for marketing that, okay, where's the risk boundary? And
Right.
I think what we're just going to see is that people do a mix of different strategies depending on how sensitive the data is.
It's interesting.
But that makes IT managers and chief security officers very nervous.
Yeah, right. Especially in this time where there's so much gray area and it's so dynamic, right?
Yep.
It's very hard to get hard lines on these topics.
It really is. I mean, everybody needs to start with some guidelines.
Yeah. I like that.
And then from there, they need to figure out where do they really see their highest risks, button up those risks, and then everything else is, you've got to accept that not everything is going to be 100% locked down. I just don't think that's realistic in this era.
So I use a service that gives me SSL and encryption.
Mm-hmm.
And is there at a retail level, is there anything higher than that in terms of protecting my data?
So, I mean, keeping your data safe when it's on your systems or when it's in flight, that's pretty much the max. I mean, if to get into a nerdy encryption conversation, there are different encryption standards. Sure. For example, current encryption in principle can be hacked by quantum computers.
Right.
Well, okay, that shouldn't be on our at the top of our list, even though it's potentially a real thing. It'll be a real thing in the future, and by then we'll use better encryption models, right?
It's always cat and mouse.
It's all good. Yes, it's always cat and mouse. Exactly. So there's that. I think the only other question is when data gets computed on, it always is decrypted.
Right.
So that's where this sort of confidential VM thing, if there's a fear that when the data is being computed on, when it's unencrypted inside the computing environment, that's where a confidential VM type of technology can help you.
Uh-huh.
But it's, I mean, not to shoot myself in the foot, but that's for very specialized use cases, because the extra cost and effort don't merit most of it.
Yep.
Unless there's a regulatory reason to do it.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I appreciate that little rabbit hole there, Bob.
Yeah, no, it's a favorite of mine, as you can tell.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, well, I appreciate the conversation, and if people are interested in having a conversation with you about supply chain or some kind of an AI data science thing, how would they get in touch with you?
So I'm at, my email is bob@oii.ai. They're certainly invited to reach out directly. The website is oii.ai, and we're also on LinkedIn. And then my handle on X is Scientist Bob. So if they want to hit me up directly, welcome any connections.
All right. Well, it's amazing. It's a great talk, and I truly do appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks, Emanuel.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Marketing in the Age of AI. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Your copy of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI is available at Amazon.com or EmanuelRose.com. You can also connect with Emanuel on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.